Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnelle Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title.
Friend, are you okay? Old friend, what do you say? Old friend, are we unique? Okay, enough of that. No one needs to hear us sing. Otherwise, we have to pay royalties.
Yeah. Mitch, I know we're looking for a working title, but we cannot name the podcast The Business of Theater. You'll never be a kid again, kiddo.
Why not? Feeling very old these days, looking at what's going on in the world.
Yes. The world continues to change at a pace that everyone is having a hard time keeping up with.
And understanding.
But we're here.
and we're here. And the perspective, of course, is, I hate to say it this way, it's only theater, it's not brain surgery.
Oh, we have shot glasses in the Theater Exile office that say there is no such thing as a theater emergency. And they are wonderful.
And yet, on the reverse side, I was taught from day one that the only part of arts management that's important is crisis management. That's all it's about. If you can't handle the crises, you don't belong in arts management.
I don't know why that's the case, but this is The Business of Theater, a working title. I'm Darnelle Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And let's get down to business. Hey, Mitch.
Hey, D.
So apparently 18 new productions are set to open on Broadway this spring.
You know what's exciting about that? The 18 people who want to buy tickets to them, they each get a show.
They're like, wow, this house is so cozy. There's barely anybody in here.
That's right. It can be COVID. I have the whole place to myself.
They still charged me $19 for the drink, though.
And $199 for the one seat.
Yes. And I'm debating on the lapel or the magnet. I can't afford them both now on account of the drink.
But the important part is you can buy the very noisy candy that they sell and no one will be disturbed.
How dare you tell me to unwrap my candy in advance? You shouldn't have bought noisy candy.
You shouldn't sell it. What is wrong that these theater owners haven't figured that out? And it's not the show, it's the theater owners. Why haven't they figured this out?
Also, why am I paying like $200 to sit in the balcony? Doesn't make sense.
Oh, Lord. Shall we name each show and what they're charging? $400 for Merrily that we just sang.
Oh, my God.
They're charging Lion King $25 later. One of the cheapest seats you can get is $199 certain weeks. This is embarrassing. And then they keep saying
how much was that?
$199.
Okay, for Lion King.
And that's not the best seat, easily. And it's 25 years old.
Yeah.
But
according to Disney, it's timeless.
Yeah, well, so unfortunately, so is inflation.
Yes,
and you can't blame it on inflation.
Yeah,
it doesn't work that way. You can't blame it on the stagehands. You can't blame it on the musicians. I'm not going to get myself in trouble and never be hired again by telling you who we can blame it on. But everybody in the industry knows.
That could be a good title for the podcast.
What?
The Business of Theater. We name names.
Well, it's interesting that most of the leaders of our unions, and there are 18 unions on Broadway, most of them have had to give up their right to getting a job in the industry ever again, because no producer or theater owner will hire them once they work for a union.
Wow.
So they have to decide they're ready to retire or dedicate themselves to the union. It's of course that's across the country in every industry, I suppose.
Yeah.
But we keep thinking of theater people as being a little bit more on the socially left side, a little more empathetic, a little more this, a little more that, and then we find out there are just as many problems within the industry here as there are in the world.
Yeah. I mean, well, we call it an industry, right? But the industry is like the man, It's like faceless. No one actually speaks on its behalf.
No, we know who they are. See,
Do we?
Yeah, we do. Again, like I said, I can't at the moment. If I'm really willing to risk it, I can name specific people. There is, in general.
All right, I got it.
Go
The
ahead.
business of theater. Mitch knows where the bodies are buried.
Well, and you know what? And if I don't, I know the people who do. and the fun part, and they'll understand this if they're listening.
Give me 5 minutes. I got a guy.
I've had lunch with a number of people in the past 2 weeks, and all we talked about is all the bodies that are buried. So, and they know a lot more than I do. But we want to be very positive because we do adore theater, and it does change our lives, and there's some amazing shows. And now that I've said that, let's talk about the negatives again. The 18 shows, someone who is very trustworthy, and someone we admire in the industry, somebody with a track record that is beyond reproach, that can write books but hasn't. This person used a phrase this week, said 18 shows open on Broadway before the Tonys, it's going to be a bloodbath.
A bath of blood.
Meaning that they can't survive. There isn't enough audience for 18 new shows in a 2-month period.
Well, do we know if these shows have limited engagements, or kind of like Fat Ham, for example? Like,
it's not about a limited engagement. You have to fill the house during that limited engagement to not lose your shirt. So yes, will some of them close because they thought they would, but they're all hoping that the audience reaction and the critical reaction is so good that they're going to extend. The only reason to put a limited run on something is to get your audience in as soon as possible. If I tell you I'm opening and we're running to next December, you go, well, maybe I'll buy a ticket for October. Let me think about it this summer. If I tell you I'm closing in June, because that's how I plan it, you go, well, I better figure out how I'm going to go see Daniel Radcliffe by June. Or how I'm going to see, as happened, French Republic, which, people are raving about. That's a limited production. That's going to close. Appropriate. That's exactly what happened to Appropriate at the Hayes Theater. Second stage said, oh, we've got a hit. They already booked something in the second stage, and now they got to move it to another theater because they believe they can make money. That's what everyone's hoping for. Because how much money can you make in 2 months? Or 3 months? Not possible.
Well, I mean, now that we've established the doom, let's talk about some things that may actually work in their favor, but also are problematic for the rest of the community.
Like?
Stars.
Right.
Okay, so for example, there are things to look forward to. You got Eddie Redmayne in Cabaret.
Right.
Eddie Redmayne and Gail Rankin. Let's see, Steve Carell in Uncle Vanya. Making his Broadway debut.
Right.
You got Jessica Lange and Jim Parsons in Mother Play with Celia Keenan-Bolger. Those names, and like Rachel McAdams in Mary Jane, like those names, particularly like Rachel McAdams, Jim Parsons, Steve Carell, those are the names, and Eddie Redmayne too. Those are the names that could potentially bring non-traditional theater goers to the theater.
Yes, and your point, there are 18 shows that are opening. You've named 4 or 5.
I know. I'm just, for example.
And by the way, nothing says, with the exception of Cabaret, which is already pre-reviewed in England, the others can be terrible. We don't know.
There's also Hell's Kitchen. Alicia Keys,
but she's not in it. She wrote it.
I know, but it's a draw. It's kind of like I'm without knowing much about it, I am certain that Hell's Kitchen will do better than Holla If You Hear Me. You know what I'm talking about, audience.
That's right.
There are 3 listeners right now who were like, I remember those signs in the train stations. No, thank you.
Did you see it? Did you
no, I did not.
I actually saw it.
It's funny to think about how long ago this was, because I was definitely on the train to, I was back and forth to Astoria when that was happening.
Okay.
I mean, the time when I was living in New York.
Yeah. But you didn't go.
No, I didn't. But I'm just saying that's how long ago that was.
and now we still have
2012, 2013.
Who is our audience post-pandemic? And I'm not talking about 3 years from now.
The community?
Right now, community? Who is the audience for Broadway, off-Broadway?
Oh, the industry. Okay, yes. So I would say my the whole world is somewhat common sense opinion is Broadway will still get whoever is ambitious enough to come to New York and wait in TKTS lines, because even though the people who don't live close to New York, who make this trip to New York, still aren't savvy enough to realize that there are ways to get tickets without waiting in that line.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like you could be at Today Tix. You might be connected to an arts organization. You could sign up for TDF, and you don't have to go right to TKTS line. But I'm glad it's there. I don't want it to go anywhere because we need that visual. Because sometimes walking by TKTS makes you think, I wonder if we can see a show tonight.
Well, no, I'm more talking about, I heard, and again, I have no evidence, so I hate to push numbers that I can't back up, but I heard from a source that this past year, I think it was 23% of the paying audience on Broadway were minorities. That has never happened.
What? 20%?
23%. That is, if that's true, and like I said, that's why I'm asking, who is our audience? We know that.
Was it Some Like It Hot?
No, I'm talking about across the industry, across the board.
I thought you meant shows on.
No,
Broadway.
I'm just talking about. Okay. So the question is, Wicked, Hamilton, Lion King, Book of Mormon, all the theme park shows now. These are things that are running and selling out based on tourism.
Yeah.
Because people come here and they already know about them. So there's no risk. Those shows...
like Guys and Dolls. No risk.
They're going to bring it in. We're getting another version of it, good or bad. Well, not only that, Cabaret. How many times do we need to see it? Not saying a new version wouldn't be phenomenal. But, again, here we go.
I'm seeing an article for Guys and Dolls. Guys and Dolls is coming back to Broadway. Hope it doesn't come up snakes.
Oh, who wrote that? It sounds, no offense, it sounds like the Liberty commercials. Liberty Insurance.
No, I just made it up.
Don't work for a marketing agency, please. Please.
It's so funny. This is my career.
Yeah, you meant Snake Eyes, by the way.
Well, in Luck Be a Lady,
Yeah,
coming out snakes.
Yeah. Anyway, I was talking with
Come on, you're the wisdom of this episode.
I am
of this podcast.
I was talking to a friend about Merrily, and we've all seen, of a certain age, we all saw the original. Funny that everyone claims they saw it, and yet it was a big bomb, which meant nobody went.
Yeah.
And of course, the new rendition has these raves. We're all intrigued by it, how somebody makes it work, because it just didn't work. So I have not seen it yet, so I don't want to comment. My guess is Jonathan Graff has something to do with it, as does Daniel Radcliffe and what's her name?
Lindsay Mendez.
Sorry, Lindsay, you're wonderful. Lindsay Mendez. No, she's wonderful in everything I've ever seen her in. Anyway, we have a lot of questions, and it's not about like being mean like on Twitter about a show. Mm-hmm. It's about trying to figure out why some things turn into wicked. And of course, in hindsight, we can all come up with 100 reasons. Mm-hmm. And why other shows that truly are good don't connect. Part of it is at the moment, there isn't enough room for 41 theaters of Broadway shows. And yet I was reminded by a producer who is older than I am, who said 100 years from before now, there were over 100 Broadway theaters. And to think that we've gone from over 100 down to 41, and we can't fill those, the question is, what has happened? So the answer has been, well, to make up for it, we charge more because less seats are being sold. And then you charge more, so less people go. And it now becomes which came first, the chicken or the egg?
And you charge the organization and the rent's too damn high.
Absolutely. So,
case in point with Second Stage.
Right, which is, yes, and that's important to bring up. Second Stage, who built a home, renovated a home, made a home off Broadway, but near Broadway, into a success because of the greed of some landlords.
Yeah.
They are being pushed out. Mm-hmm. It also makes you wonder, of course, rent. I will have to tell you, I don't mean the show rent. I mean, leasing. There's a theater far, far on the west side of Manhattan. Very nice theater, but it's out of the way. It's not something that's going to attract a lot of people. I do happen to know that prior to the pandemic, they were charging rent of $340,000 a year for nonprofits to use it. I'm trying to figure out what nonprofit in its right mind thinks that's a viable rent.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not in the middle of walkable traffic.
Yeah.
Right? And so that question goes, of course, across the country. It does matter. Location. And if you're in the wrong location, you're fighting it's not so invisible enemy.
Yeah.
Right? I do know, I will tell you, I think it's a funny story. Back in the day of the New York Shakespeare Festival, the producer had decided to have an international Latino festival, and he brought in plays from other countries. Very expensive. He brought in a show from Mexico, which had horses in it, and they had to use military transport to get it in. Mm. And they couldn't, of course, fit it into a New York theater, so they did it in Westchester County. And they bussed the audience from Manhattan to the show for 3 performances. Is that a good use of nonprofit money? And yet I'm told I did not get to see it. I did work on it, but they didn't let the staff go up in the buses. We had to just sit there and work the administrative end.
What else was in Westchester? Like, did they Was it like a tourism effort, or it was just to get them to the venue?
They just to get them to the venue and back.
Yeah, seems like a missed opportunity. That could have been a whole day trip. Here's what Westchester has to offer. They could have had a meal somewhere.
But Westchester wasn't involved in it.
Yeah, I know. I'm just
no, but you're absolutely right. Of course, in the old days, we used to have dinner theater and a lot of shows that were struggling. They always try to hook up with a restaurant and say, "Come for dinner," and we, cut the price of the theater ticket if you eat at such and such place. And they try to, and that never works either. I don't know why we keep doing that over and over again. We don't learn lessons. Anyway, so talk about the audience in Philadelphia. How is that different than the audience in New York?
Well,
because you know both. You've worked in both places, so you know both.
Yeah, I think, our community, like every theater community, is struggling with the sunsetting of subscriptions, I would say. It's no longer something you could set your watch to. But what's interesting is that organizations were really making their decisions based on their subscribers, like what people have come to expect from us, what they keep coming back for. Like, I mean, I remember over the years, like, it was like a leap for some productions that Walnut Street Theater chose in the past seasons, and it was like, what? This is like a fine piece, but like for this audience, it's like they weren't expecting this, like there was a year that Walnut, who primarily produces like musicals and those classic like theater pieces, produced Of Mice and Men and put it in the middle of the season on the main stage. And that was a risk for them.
Yeah.
Sure. And it's like, it's crazy. It's like, say what you want about Walnut, because everybody has an opinion. But if I hear that they're going to produce Of Mice and Men on the main stage, I'm like, the production value alone, I'm going to have to go see this. Right. And then who they cast, would be also a draw. Like, I think there's a lot of ways to spin that into a win. But, the subscription thing, I think everybody's looking at gimmicks. Like I saw, so like the Wilma Theater is doing this live stream initiative with the League of Live Stream Theater.
Right.
And so they're offering a digital subscription for their season. And so you can either come to the theater or buy this digital subscription and then, watch it, in a window of time. But you at least have the opportunity to see it, and hopefully the quality is good. But that's something I saw another.
You're talking about production. Who is still coming to the theater?
Well, the reason I'm saying that is because if you're like, they're looking towards the future, saying like, there's an audience for this live stream option. And it might just be an opportunity to get people who don't live in the area to, to engage in the work that Wilma is producing. And it might be enough to say, okay, now take a trip and come see us live. It's like you have, I do think the live theater initiative is an opportunity to say, here's the energy that happens in live theater. Like, we're capturing that too, And so perhaps you can see that remotely and say, oh, I miss that. Or that seems like a lot of fun and want to be a part of it. It's like, look in, see what you're missing. At least I hope that that's what they're doing. But I also think a lot of people have gotten off this, gotten out of this car of continuously running to theater productions, and they're being more selective. So I don't think, I know that there are artists who have walked away from theater or at least moved out of the area, but I do think that there are still dedicated, like, diehard theater patrons. They're just being more selective because they have to. And
what do you think of the idea? And this was presented to me. I like I said, don't have answers. If I did, I don't need to talk to anybody. Just do it, right? But the shift, if we have less audience, certainly subscriptions, as you said, whether it's a cycle and it'll come back, doesn't really matter. The nonprofit theater certainly needs to know what it takes less risk on how many people it has if it has a subscription, right? Broadway doesn't know it's going to get anybody.
Yeah.
Right? Each show is its own risk. So assuming we let nonprofit theater work on that basis as well, how can we afford, or under what circumstances can we do shorter runs? And only if there's a demand, increase it. Now, that's the whole idea of limited runs. I know many nonprofits will say we have a 4-week run or an 8-week run for all of our shows, and that's it, right? But so the idea is, what if we were to say we're going to produce on the basis that we only have 2 weeks, and we're going to figure out a way that it breaks even? Is that even possible? I don't have the answer. I'm presenting this as a proposal that we rethink what we're doing, for whom, and how many people care about it.
Yeah. So, well, I will say, so we know that each production is a line item. It's all of its expenses are tied to it. However, there are annual expenses tied to every production. And so that is what's creating the conflict. And let's do a limited run. Let's do a shorter run and just get who we get. And that way we don't have the expense of producing this much longer. We're creating a sense of urgency, and maybe we will fill these houses. But I think we're so used to thinking that we're not going to fill the house. Like, it's almost a risk to say that you're going to get 50% of your house every night.
But there are two things that come to mind with what you're bringing up. I do know, for example, and now I'm going back decades, when we presented on Broadway an offering to investors, the numbers that we felt were necessary to explain, and it is required by New York state law, is if a show at 100% of capacity, which never happens, but except if you're Hamilton or Wicked, but at 100% of capacity, how many weeks will it take to break even, to return the investment? That's in every offering for a Broadway show. Then we did the math. We always used to use 60 or 65% of capacity as what was the realistic expectation of a reasonable hit. Because you have discounted tickets, you don't have full houses, you're in previews, whatever the excuse was. Most plays, not talking about musicals, most plays could recoup their money and pay back all their investors using this math in about 20 to 25 weeks. Now it's years. The expenses have gone out of this world. Not necessarily because you pay a stagehand more money, but because how many stagehands the current level of production requires. So, for example, I'm going to go specifically to Beauty and the Beast. The Phantom of the Opera had an unbelievable number of wardrobe people. Their costumes were out of this world. Beauty and the Beast almost doubled that. If you have to have that many wardrobe people, your expenses go up. They're not each getting paid more. So as you decide to build on your production values, that's a decision of the producer, the director, and the designers. We've lost our way, it seems to me, because a couple of decades ago, we were able to make it fit, and the set still looked Broadway's spectacular. So what are we doing? What choices are we making? Where are we spending the money? The other part of that, which is how much audience is realistic, and there are plenty of shows, and again, I keep bringing this up, I've worked at certain regional theaters that were only summer theaters.
Mm-hmm.
That means the rest of the year they had a couple of people on salary.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they rehired most of their people for the summer, which is a pain in the butt. Having to reapply, re-interview, rehire, it's really a pain. But that's how you cut costs. You can't afford to keep them all on year round if you only have enough audience for a summer or just the winter or just the fall. Pick one. If you're getting a total of I'm making this number up, 5,000 people into your theater, you don't need to spread that out over a year. So where are the choices that these theaters are making? And by the way, we just lost 2 more theaters this week to bankruptcy in the U.S. This is not going well.
Yeah.
So when I'm bringing this up, it's not that my desire is to have shorter runs of these theaters. I'm just trying to keep them alive so we can do more works and give more creative people the chance to make our lives better with their artistic visions.
You're talking about North Carolina theater? Yeah.
Well, that's one of them that closed this week. It's happening all over this country. Mm-hmm. And it's okay. It's capitalism that says survival of the fittest. But there are, that's me being cynical.
So I wrote while you were talking. So was busing the audience to Westchester a good idea?
No.
Well, I'm saying like now, because if you're thinking about the cost of producing in New York on Broadway, for example, I know it's not easy to do, but like, I wonder if it does make sense to be like, we're producing the show in Bergen and driving you over.
If you know what, the point is regional theater is perhaps our new salvation. But we have to rethink what regional theater means. If regional theater is every summer we do Pippin and The King and I, and even a wide variety of this stuff because that's our audience, that's fine. But that's not the theater I'm talking about.
Well, the thing about nonprofit theater, in my opinion, like when I was dreaming of finding a place in this community, it was about new play development.
Yes, thank you.
It was about bringing new works to the stage, but now it's about finding a hit. And everybody is making choices based on like, how can I ride a gravy train? Is this going to be a choice that actually moves us in a direction of solvency? And the thing is, like, if you haven't changed how your development team operates, it doesn't matter how successful this show is going to be.
Right.
I'm just using development as an example, but I'm saying like your organization has to operate differently in order for you to run more successfully. Well, it's not about a show being a hit, because that would just give you a temporary infusion of cash that you would wastefully spend anyway if you're not already thinking about what you would do with more money.
Yes, no argument. My point is that there are different types of choices to be made regionally. If you are in a state that has almost no theater and your area brings in Pippin, The King and I, whatever, that's great. You may never have had that there. No argument. But if you are in a place with competitive theaters, then the point is, why not bring in something new? And maybe there's only enough of an audience to do it for a week or two. You have to figure out how to budget. That's the talent you're asking to bring to your theater. And right now, many artistic directors, let me be careful, many artistic directors see it as their artistic playground. I want to do this. I want to do that, and I want a bigger set, and I want a bigger cast. I'm in favor of that if you have the money.
Okay.
And now the point is that even if you get a hit, you're only going to have so much money coming in. So we're talking about that there are two ways to do this. You can do it commercially, which is we're producing something we think is going to run forever, have a giant audience, and will eventually move to Broadway. Okay, that's one way. The other way, even let me give kudos to Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago. They've done shows with over 40 people in the cast. There's no way they're ever going to break even in a tiny theater, but they're not running it forever.
Yeah.
And they are raising the money to be able to pay those people. If they couldn't raise the money, don't do it.
Yeah.
And there's some level of realism that has to balance with you go first, and then I'm going to move on to board of directors because they're at fault.
I wonder if we sunset the subscription model, will we see that more? Will we see more companies making an effort to, we want this one production to be a success, and if it is, we will then move our next production into the pipeline.
But what if, well, that could happen, but why are you just trying to have one success? You know how it's like how much of a gamble each show is. We don't know.
I mean because you can't because if you're having a hard time selling a 3 or 4 show subscription, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps we carry as if we're putting all of our effort behind one show and do everything we have to do to make this one show a success, and then gauge whether this show is going to do well enough for us to move on to the next show. Or I don't know. I think the thing that Broadway does that is something that we kind of do, but we don't always have the means, is that there's a marketing machine. It almost comes first before all these pieces come into play. It's like they've already figured out what this looks like from a marketing standpoint, and they're already putting those impressions out in the world.
Right.
But like a nonprofit theater may not even know. Like I know, for example, like there are situations where you can't even issue contracts because you're not even sure if you're going to be able to handle those first payments. And so that is delaying admin things in the back. And whether, even though everybody has been told this, in tough times, you don't compromise your marketing. People compromise our marketing all the time. It's
Absolutely,
like, this is the thing. If you want people out there to know that nothing has changed, then don't change your marketing. But if they realize that they can't, well, I don't mean don't change, but I mean don't scale down your marketing. If they start to realize that they normally see you in these publications or in this media space and they don't see you there because you can't afford it,
you're allowed, as you said, the change is okay. You're allowed to change what your marketing is, but not having it robust is the problem.
Yes.
Because for most of us, whether it's politics, theater, film, or just Tide detergent, if we don't know it's there in front of our face every day, we don't think about it. We have families. We have to pay for groceries. You've got to convince. I don't literally walk into the grocery store and say, oh, there's a product I never heard of before. Let me try it.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. Why would you, when you have free streaming, free television, it's not free, but you're paying your subscription rates, and it's in front of you every day, why would you take a chance to go to the theater not knowing what you're getting involved in? It's crazy.
Yeah.
And these nonprofits, and regional theaters and Broadway, by the way, there are people I know who will not work with what they call stupid producers, and there are tons of them. So there are these people who have money and who have picked a show they like, and they will not make any decent decision that everyone knows on Broadway does or doesn't work. No one wants to work with them because they're going to close their own show. The same thing, the regional theaters haven't been put to the test except for begging for money. Once you get to begging, the board of directors needs to replace their team. The problem is the board of directors is usually chosen by the team, the artistic team. It's a conflict of interest. It's a problem with the business model of nonprofit theater. Again, I can't name names. I've been on the board of a couple of places. They were irresponsible. They basically did whatever the artistic director wanted. They said yes, and at the end of the year, everyone on the board was asked to cough up a lot of money to cover the losses. Mm-hmm. There was no campaign to raise money along the year because everyone thought they were doing okay.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden at the end of the year, someone says, oh, we're in the red. We're in the red. Well, why didn't you tell us that in June? Why couldn't you predict we'd be in the red? Why couldn't we have, as a board, sat down and said, well, you got to scale this down now, or we better raise some more money now?
I know. I'm not sure what, if you are that kind of leader, what are you afraid of? You're supposed to, they're there to support you. But if you lie to them or you leave things out, they can't help you.
But you're giving up your entire ego. If you are that artistic director, sometimes the managing director, sometimes it's the CFO. They're just saying, I got to keep my job as little as they're paying me. Ugh. I can't look bad, and I'm really working hard. I haven't had time to think about what I ought to do because so much of it is the full circle in our conversation, crisis management. I walk into the office and everything I thought I was going to work on today,
everything's on fire.
Is out the window. I have to deal with the fire. Mm-hmm. And that is a business model problem. And we had the pandemic to tell us we need to rethink this model. And we didn't do it. So, Darnelle, you and I have to figure this out.
We have to fix it. We alone can fix it.
That's right.
That's a rejected title right there.
The business of theater. We alone can fix it. That's the closest title we've come to.
I don't want to be tied, and I don't want to be too close to that guy. Not at all. Well, so we know the leaders. We know that some leaders' egos are the problem, which is very frustrating.
Almost all of them. That's why they're leaders.
Yeah, I guess so. It's like sometimes just in general conversation, I do catch myself and go, yeah, I guess I was sort of operating like I couldn't be told anything, and it's like, it takes a lot for you to actually realize that about yourself. And I think it's hard for people because they're convinced, these leaders are convinced that there is a name that's been fabricated about them in society. And so they have to uphold that. Instead of just saying, we just operate, we're just running it, we're just trying to run a successful company. That's it.
And of course, it's not just in the theater. We have to acknowledge it. I mean, look at every corporation and what some of these crazy men and women have done with their companies. On the other hand, they've got fires happening also, and we're all stuck there. Mm-hmm. I think, though, it is a valuable thought that there are enough dreamers in the entertainment industry and the theater industry that we have to sit down and share our thoughts for success is the wrong word.
Right.
For revamping a very exciting industry. That's what captures us in the first place. It's probably why artistic directors and board presidents who may have money, it's like, this is not just about having a social tea with your other, people on the board saying, isn't it wonderful? We saw the show this summer and it was a great show. And, oh, you mean you need another $40,000 from me? And I'm supposed to cough it up? Okay, I'll have a dinner at my house. And you just let it go. No, you're supposed to stop the train from going forward until you figure it out.
Yeah, spending $10,000 to earn $30,000 it's only $20,000.
Yeah,
you spent $10,000 to have a party to. I mean, you could actually make that money if you bought boxes of candy and sold them for $1. So remember that, like, that whole premise of that fundraiser candy was you're buying it at half price, and you're selling it, to turn a profit. It's so this is what I was going to say. Do you think the community, well, not the community, let's just say, do you think our patrons think we are broken as an industry? Or do you think they are just prioritizing other things right now?
As when my original question was, who's our audience? I don't think most of them give a royal whatever. Yeah. I think they're saying you either entertain me or you don't. You either give me a reason to show up, or I can stay home and watch TV, or for $22, I can go see a first-run movie. I don't think they care about us. The people in the industry that go, by the way, just as a historical note, in the days of My Fair Lady, a hit show ran a year and a half. That's all they ran, and that was a massively hit show. The audience was people living in New York who had money and wanted to see theater. It wasn't the Disney audience bringing their families in that have to spend $1,000 to see Lion King because there are four of them, and they have to spend that much money.
Oh, it was crazy.
But these people were a very high, quote, what's the word? They dressed
high
income audience for the most part. And even when that started to change, even when I could go to the theater in shorts and a t-shirt, the primary factor was the show could last about 3 months on the New York audience if you got them excited. After that, if you did not have a tourist audience, your show would probably have to close. Therefore, you budgeted your show to last 3 months and break even. It might not have, could be a bomb, but that's how you dealt with it. Now, we've thrown that out the window. We need 5 years for a musical to break even, and if it's a bomb, it's a bomb. And everyone loses all their money. Why are we doing that? Why can't we say, hey, guess what? We've got $100,000 to put on a show on Broadway. How do we do it? I mean, wouldn't that be amazing?
Like, so with knee pads.
There you go. And if it's wonderful, because in a sense, Hamilton was almost that. The set for Hamilton, as wonderful as it is, could be nothing. You can get rid of it and the show would still work.
The turntable's the most expensive part.
Thank you. And the lights. And you need lights.
Yeah.
But you don't need. Chorus-Line destroyed this. Chorus-Line was the first show on Broadway to use computerized lighting. Changed everything. We went from having maybe 60 lamps being used on a show with footlights. Remember footlights? They don't exist anymore except for a stylistic thing. Now we have computerized lighting, and we have 400 lamps, 500 lamps. It's a fortune. But we lit the stage before with 60, and it didn't have computers. We have choices to make. So nonprofits can say, we want to put on, and by the way, at Theater Exile, let me give them credit. Your sets, which don't look expensive to me, relatively, have been wonderful. They're beautiful. They feel full. For Broadway, they'd cost nothing.
Mm.
But for your organization, that's pretty expensive, I imagine. So the question is, do you adapt? Do you spend even less? Do you try to do shows without sets? I don't have the answers. But if all you have in your bank is $10, you can go beg your relatives for another 30, but you better budget within what you got. And then impress people with it, because then they'll start giving you money.
But the mindset of the theater community is, if you only have $10 in your pocket, you can get an industry ticket and come join us tonight.
There you go.
I don't think you heard what I said.
Yeah.
I only have $10.
That's right.
Yeah. But why not better your life with a little bit of theater? I went and saw that show with my last $10, and I walked out a millionaire because I got hit by a car and I sued that guy.
There you go. That would be a plot for a new show.
Yeah.
And it would bomb unless you put Daniel Radcliffe in it.
Yeah. There was something you said and it reminded me of Pippin. Oh, you mentioned Pippin.
Yeah.
And that's a rejected title too. The business of theater, we've got magic to do.
Yeah, no, definitely rejected.
Yeah.
You're using up all of our great subtitles.
Well, I think I already used them before. It's funny. This is like a callback. Those listeners who are like, you used that one already. It was in the show notes. I saw it. We'll see.
Do you think any of them care?
Actually, a couple of people who told me they listened to the podcast, and I was like, you're listening to the podcast? No, I mean, thank you.
Yeah.
Said that they liked the fact that there is a working title. It was a mistake.
Yeah.
But not a mistake, but it was like, I think we should change. It's a working title. We should change it to something. And then it just became, it
became a running joke.
A hook. Yeah. What's the working title this time? Yeah.
So
yes. I don't know. Of course, we don't know what the right thing is, but what I do see is everyone jumping on the bandwagon about the same thing. It's like, oh, now all of a sudden everyone's having a talk about memberships, or oh, everybody's looking into live streaming, and it's like no one has an original idea, and these are not even original ideas. These are ideas that they tried to incorporate years ago, and everybody thought they were too good for it, and now.
But here's my point on that. That's all superfluous we go to the theater for the play or the musical. It is the substance in which everything else works or doesn't work. So how you sell it, many choices on that. You do have to sell it, but how you sell it, each theater can make its own choice. How you staff it, each theater can make its own choice. If you don't start with something worth seeing, you won't get your audience. And often they're not going to give you the chance to convince them to see it before they hear about it.
Yeah.
Word of mouth is still the most important marketing tool any show has, which is a problem when you have a limited run. Because it takes a minimum of 3 weeks for things to have an effect. So that's why previews used to be cheaper. That's why previews were always half empty or filled up with free tickets. Now we just charge the same no matter what. The audience either wants to come or it doesn't. You create a mystique or it doesn't. But the the bottom line still is, if you have a rotten show that bores people, no one's going to come, and they're probably not going to give you a chance on your second show.
Yeah, I get that, but at the same time, if the show is a new title that you haven't seen, or it's a premiere, it's really hard to kind of it's really hard to kind of rest on what you just said, because there isn't enough information in a world premiere to to be like, oh, this show's already a hit. Like,
you just said it though, it's marketing. And I'm not saying, again, as an audience member, I look at, well, which shows did I take a chance on? Which shows did I only go to because I already knew about them? And I know I'm not a typical audience member, but I still check. I still say, what's the mystique? What's the hook? And who is telling me about this?
Yeah. And
sometimes, because certainly in New York, every night I have a minimum of 60 choices. 60 every night. I go to one a week at the most.
Yeah.
You go to a lot because you're part of the press. I don't. Yeah. So if I'm going once a week at the most, how does somebody convince me to go to theirs? Especially when they're not giving me free tickets. Right? That I check that out whenever I'm working on any show. That's the standard by which I ask the question, what are we doing? How do we sell this? Why would anyone come? And we bring this full circle to our discussion. There are 18 new Broadway shows. I love Eddie Redmayne, don't get me wrong, but I've seen Cabaret 9,000 times. Compare that, then do I want to see X show with whoever? Well, or do I want to see a show with nobody famous in it? Because the topic is interesting. What is going to isolate a show to make me want to go? I have 18. I am not, by the way, a producer that, again, I had lunch with this week, used to be a Tony voter. He quit because he said, you can't get me to see 18 shows in 2 months. And most of them are not great. Why am I going to sit through that?
Yeah.
And by the way, I also know an off-Broadway league member who was required, in order to vote for the off-Broadway, the Obie Awards, had to see 92 off-Broadway shows in 1 year. She gave up in midstream. She had to quit, saying, I'm going out of town with my family. I'm going to miss 20 of these shows. Therefore, I'm not going to be allowed to vote. So she just quit. This is crazy. Why shouldn't there be Indiana, Chicago, Philadelphia, Miami, Florida, San Diego, San Francisco? Why aren't they doing all these new works first? And they're not. And I will never forgive these other cities for turning their back on new writers. And I don't mean, it's not every theater, of course, right? But there are enough theaters out there that can make room, even if they still do their cabarets and Fiddler on the Roofs, and then once a week do a new play and give that writer a chance. They're not doing it. And those new plays cost next to nothing if you're just trying them out. But you have to make your audience want to go, because that's how you get a reaction.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are here. We're lecturing our audience.
No, they're hearing us. It's fine.
The passion is real. I know so many good writers, even if their plays aren't the best. They are great writers, and they've all fallen into the trap of looking for television, looking for streaming networks, and some of their stuff is wonderful, but they want to write theater, but nobody will give them a chance.
Well, I wonder if, when there was Not before the last one, but there was a writer's strike that prompted a wave of web series and
Right.
smaller productions. So I wonder if this struggle that the arts community is having, particularly with organizations, might prompt some sort of guerrilla new play development.
That would be nice. But again, shouldn't it be part of our regular business model?
Yeah, it should be. But maybe we need new people to get in and think about it first, because new play development is just something that kind of passes for education, passes for community engagement, and it's all those things that allow you to be justified to do everything else. But really, I don't know that we're honestly looking at whether this is complementary to what is on the main stage or not.
It's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
And that should be what artistic directors are discussing. They're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And please, I don't want to attack artists. There are some there are some people with impeccable taste. And that's the problem, is that there are a few with that, and then there are many others who just know how to do a job.
Yeah. Just look at us as the survey that you get after you buy something, when you don't want to give them a 10 because there's always room for improvement.
Right.
And
exactly.
so that's basically what we're saying. Are we going anywhere? Absolutely not. We'll be here until it's like smoldering embers.
Yeah. Well, by the way, you may give them a 9. I give them a 5.
Well, I'm saying just no one ever gets a full score, because that there's something they could have done better.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're saying. There's just more to be done. And as soon as we shake off these old ways that haven't worked for years, and the pandemic clearly told us it's time to change, and that we'll start to see some progress, and we'll see some different modes of thinking, because we can't keep going to the people who used to fund us. They're not funding us anymore. No amount of talking to them is going to change their mind. You have to find new people. This is, if anybody read Who Moved My Cheese, that's what this is. The cheese has been moved. We have to go find new cheese.
So we want to encourage our audience to call us up and give us money. And give us money.
Yes.
And we'll be glad to be the ones to do it. Joke.
That's the business of theater. We send us your money. Is that what you said? That's our working title.
That's our working title.
The business of theater. Send us your money.
We had 2 good titles. What was the other one earlier?
We did. I forget. You'll never be a kid again, kiddo.
No, whatever. Anyway,
Mitch knows where the bodies are buried.
There you go.
We alone can fix it.
We alone can fix it. That was the other one. We alone can fix it, and send us your money. Maybe we can combine them.
So we should tell you about our consultancy now.
Yeah.
It's the business of theater, a consultancy. Hire us. We'll just shout at you in your meetings and make everybody feel bad about the choices they've made. Yeah.
Anyway,
okay, but we do have to go. That is the business of theater, a working title. I'm Darnelle Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And we will see you at the theater. Yay. Please bring a friend, because theater's more fun with a +1.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Bye, D.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnelle Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at em3ryotm.